Hi, my name is Dean Chessman, and today I'm going to show you how you can make this motion reactive text particle system in TouchDesigner. Before we start though, a couple things. The project file for this and all my other tutorials are available to my Patreon supporters. Also, if you are looking for help with a project similar to this one, I am a freelance TouchDesigner developer and be happy to help you out with your projects. Just hit me up and let me know. Also, lastly, be sure to like and subscribe to this to see my future tutorials. Thanks. Let's get started. So I'm going to start out by making some variables for myself, starting with a constant top. And I'm going to set my width and height. So I'm going to do this with a vertical video resolution, so 1080 by 1920. And I know I'm going to want to calculate a ratio of that. So I'm going to do a select because I know I'm going to also add another constant here. So I'm going to take my width and height, bring that into a math, and combine channels with divide. And that'll give me my ratio. So I'm going to rename that to be a ratio. And then I'm going to merge these two together. And put that in a null and call it variables. Then I'm going to right click on that, hit view, and drag it to the top so I can have these available when I need them. So another constant I'm going to need is I want to have a variable for the number of particles just so I can change it easily. So let's call this particle underscore count. And let's set it to start. Let's do 3000. Okay, so that's a good starting point. Maybe we'll come back to that in a little bit. Okay, so let's get kind of to the main SOP setup of this. So the gist of this is I want to have different text that will be spelled out with particles, and then I want to transition between those different words and have the particles kind of move and form those particles. So let's first make our text top, and I want to pick a serif font and something everybody has, so I'm just going to do Times New Roman. And let's do text, let's say make. And okay, so I got my text. I'm going to put that into a null. I'm going to convert it to a chop with a SOP to chop. And let's see, I'm going to take that. I'm just going to make our sort of like initial instancing setup with everything, and then we'll go in and sort of edit it all to make it do what we want. So we've got our SOP to chop, which will make more sense of why I'm converting it to chops in a little bit. I'm going to convert that or take that into a null. I'm going to call this position or POS for position. And then I'm going to make my little rendering instancing network here. So let's use a circle for my particle. And I need this pretty small, so 0.01 to start. I might even need to go smaller than that. Put that into a geo. And just a reminder, if you drag out and hit tab, but when you select your geo, it'll create this input for you. Then let's create our material with a constant chop. Drag that on there for click material. And then I'm going to have a camera, of course, and then a render. And I'm going to set the render size to be what my width and height variables are. So in the common tab, I'll add my width and height and the resolution. So now I have a nice pop there. And then in the camera, I'm going to do orthographic, and I'm going to make the ortho width my ratio. And let's see, what else am I going to want to do? I'm going to also need to change my transform, but I'll get to that in a little bit so we can see kind of the why behind that. All right, let's set up our instancing in the geo. Let's go to instancing tab, turn instancing on, and this is where I'm going to bring in my position chop and my X, Y, and Z positions for each particle. I'm going to select here TX, TY, TZ. Oh. Okay, so yeah, so we're getting something here. All right, so my first problem here is if I just take if I just take my SOP in, I'm just getting points at each part of the text, but I want that. I want these particles to kind of spell out the text. So the first mistake I made there is that instead of just using these points, I want to use in between this a sprinkle. So sprinkles is going to just spread out as it kind of says. You're going to sprinkle particles all across my SOP texture, across the surface. So you can do a surface, you can do bounding box, you can do volumes, and then we have number of points for that. So I'm going to bring in my particle count to number of points. So now using that sprinkle SOP, I'm converting that same data. Now you can see I'm getting these nice particles spelling out my word make. Okay, so obviously we're seeing some problems here already. Should I fix that now or later? Yeah, so let's fix it now. So part of the reason this is happening, so when I'm converting from a SOP to my chop data, you'll see I'm getting a range of, it's mapping it to the absolute position here. So I've got, my XY data here. I'm going way, from kind of Y 0 to like 0.8 or something. And then X, I'm going from 0 to like, 2 or almost 3. But for what we're going to do, I want to keep everything kind of within a UV mappable space, so between zeros and ones. And because my ratio is 0.5625, I want to have everything fit in between that. So to make things easy on myself, I'm just going to do sort of a manual transform of this SOP. And before we do that, let's right click on view on my render output here, so I can kind of see what's happening. So I want to move this into fitting into this position. And I'm going to do this a couple ways actually. So one of the things I know I'm going to want to do is, instead of having my text be horizontally aligned in the reading direction, I want it to be centered. So that way when I change this text value, it'll just always be centered. So now that I have that, I'm going to take this, I'm going to scale it down. So that's kind of inside my readable area. And obviously now my particles are too big, as I predicted my particles might be, and I'm going to bring them down something a little more particle-y. Okay, so now I've got a basic setup here. I've got my SOP transforming into a space that fits within my camera view, that goes from 0 to 1 and 0 to 0.5625. And that's being converted into chop data, and then that data is used for my instancing. Okay, so what do I want to do next? So now I want to start changing my text. The way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to change what my input is into this text parameter on my text SOP. So I'm going to do it in this example with an LFO into account. So let's take an LFO. I'm going to make it a pulse, and then into account. I'm going to bring that into a null. And I'm going to call this, switch ID. And then, I'm going to create a little table with the text that I want. So I'm going to create a table. I'm just going to create, let's say 3 rows. I'm going to put in some text, make things flow. And then from there, I'm going to use a select. And then that's going to go into a null. And in the select, I want to select rows based on the index. And I want that index to be from the switch ID, but I want that to stay within 0, 1, and 2. So the way I'm going to do that is inside my count. I've got a tab here for count. And then in the limit, I'm going to use a loop. So I'm going to put my limit maximum to be set based on the number of rows in my table. So this table is called table 1. So I'm going to say, let's stretch this out so you can see what I'm typing. So op table 1 dot num rows. Okay, so that will go 0 to 3, which I'm not getting. Also, let's reset our count so we get a nice even integer. So we go 0, 1, 2, 3 back to 0, but I actually want it to go only 0 to 2, so I'm going to say -1. and then reset just to make sure we're staying on the integers. Great. Okay, so now how I'm going to use this number, I'm going to, in my select, I'm going to have my start and my end row index be based on this switch ID. So I'm going to reference that. Great. So now I'm changing words with my LFO. Right now the frequency is happening every second. Let's do 1/2 seconds. So once every 2 seconds, I'm going to change that. It feels a little bit more readable. And then, okay, so now how do I connect these two? In my text one, I'll go down to my text parameter and I'm going to reference my null. Actually, let's rename this a little better. Let's call this word. And so inside here, I'm going to say op word. And then I'm going to reference the cell number with the cell is just 00. It's the only one in there. And then I need to evaluate that every frame. So now I'm updating that word every half second here. Okay, and you'll notice like my font doesn't look super great in here, but with the sprinkle, it kind of figures itself out. You know, I could go in and up my font size to try and change that, or let's see. Oh, it's because I didn't pick Times New Roman. I picked a different font. Let's try. I think Times New Roman will probably look a little smoother. Let's see. There we go. A little smoother. Let's bring that font size back down. Make sure things fits in there. Okay, so now we've got our words changing, but I don't want them to just instantly change. I want them to have sort of a movement that goes between them. The way I'm going to do that is a pretty simple method using the spring chop. So out of my SOP2, I'm going to drag out and add a spring top. You'll notice it'll first just have three channels with one sample each, but I want it to be a spring for each sample. So every time something changes, it's going to use this springy effect. Now, when I connect it, you'll see. So every time I change, it's going to spring between those two, or spring between the positions of the particles. But obviously, I want to tweak some values here. So I'm actually going to up my damping constant decent amount so it kind of comes to rest faster. And then I'm also going to bring down my mass. So it's kind of like makes them feel, lighter. They kind of bounce right in. So there's some movement in there. Okay. So the other thing that I'm seeing here, obviously, is that like these kind of look like chunks of the particles kind of move all at once. And that's because, it's when it's creating the geometry and making these sprinkles, it's creating the number of particles kind of in the similar sort of like, a similar sort of order, and I want to make it more random, or give it something so it's less you see less of those pieces of the geometry kind of popping out. So I'm going to enter in between here a sort, and I'm going to sort it by random. And other things, like if you want to try some different ones, you could try sorting by X or sorting by Y. You kind of get different effects based on that. You can kind of see there. And depending on what kind of effect you want. Let's put it on random for right now. We're still kind of seeing those chunks, but I think we're going to see that disappear as we move forward. Okay, so what do we do now? So now we've got, these particles, they're changing, but still not super interesting yet. One of the things that I want to happen, so if I'm going to use this for maybe like a lyric video or something like that, I want it to be kind of interacting with what's happening in the video behind it. So let's bring in a video. I'm going to find, let's see, my Finder here. I'm going to bring in a couple videos here. Okay. So I got a couple of videos here from Pexels. They're just free videos you can find if you search for, kind of descriptors of what these videos are. I'll try to make a link to them in the description. Let's just start with this top one for now. First of all, for my video, I want to keep it fit within my resolution. So let's bring in a fit top. I'm going to do 1080 by 1920. And then I'm going to bring it to a null, call this video, so I'm going to reference that in other places. Okay, and so one of the things I want to do is I'm going to have these particles affected by whatever the actual motion in the video is. And to do that, I'm going to use my favorite old tool, the Optical Flow tool. In my palette, I'm going to open it up. I'm going to go in and find my Optical Flow. Okay, and bring in my video. Okay, and real quick, I'm going to show you something. So you'll see that I get this flickering effect right off the bat. If I normalize what the value coming out of my optical flow is, that flickering is happening because my video here is not matching my frame rate of what my project is. So I need to make sure in my video that I say on the second tab here that we interpolate frames. So now when I go in, I get a lot less flickery. I get a lot more of the actual motion that I want. So make sure if you see that you're getting like a crazy flickering in your optical flow, it's most likely because your video source is not matching your frame rate of your project. You could also just bring your project frame rate down if that, for whatever reason, makes more sense for you. So, okay, so we've got our optical flow. What do I want to do with this now? So I'm going to actually use, instead of just straight optical flow, I'm going to use optical flow feedback. So that way, you know, as there's motion, the particles kind of push and move smoothly based on what's happening in the video. So you can't see there's a lot going on here, but you can see for my normalized values, there's data. So for making optical flow feedback, I'll delete that for now. I'm going to go put into a feedback and then straight into a displace. And I'm going to use both the input and the output because I'm going to use the actual optical flow itself to push and move the displacement itself. Okay, and then for the values in here, I know I'm going to use optical flow has red and green. The midpoint is going to be at 0. My displace weight I want to keep really small, 0.001, because that means every frame or every loop through the feedback loop, I only want it to displace by that tiny amount. That seems good for now. Let's add a blur to that and a math, because I know I'm going to want to fade this out a little bit at a time. The fade out, I'm going to do 0.992, sounds about right. And then let's put that into an add and then connect it to my original optical flow. Let's look at the normalized value to see what we're getting. Okay. So I feel like we should be seeing more here. What are we missing? Okay, I think that should actually be fine, but maybe we'll figure out what I did wrong here in a minute. All right, I'm also going to add in here as well another blur, from straight from the optical flow, just so we're not getting kind of like individual pixel data. I want it to be a little more smooth just to get the general motion of things. All right, turn off my normalization here. And let's put this into a null and call this flow. And let's move this back. All right, we're going to spread things out a little more here because I'm going to add some more data in between my chops. Okay, so I've got my flow data here. Now, how do I add this to my position data for my particles? The way to do that is going to be a basic top to chop. And then I'm going to use my position data as an input to say which samples I want. Because the top to chop right now, if I just leave it, it's just taking, based on this crop tab, it'll take something starting at the 0.5 vertical, so like right in the middle line. It'll go from the full left side to the full right side and just sample all the pixels from the left to right side. But that's not what I want. I want it to sample from where these pixels are in a UV space, right? And so I'm going to use my positions of my particles as my input. And now you'll notice my number of particles here matches the number of samples here because these are sampling from this image. Now we've got another problem here in that this data is actually just giving me a direct feedback, or direct image from sorry, this information is getting me where the particles are in space here in the SOP data. So you notice I'm going from -2 to 0.2, 0 to 0.10, that kind of thing. So I need these all to be within, I need it to match my UV space. And that's going to be 0 to 1 left to right and 0 to 1 top to bottom. There's a couple different ways I could do that. And let's see, which one do I want to do? Because right now I'm already using a camera at 0, 0. And so what are we going to do with this? Yeah, okay, so let's just do a remap based on that data. So let's take this into a math and then remap our ranges. So first of all, let's see. No, that's not what I want to do. That's not what I want to do. Sorry. Okay, let's illustrate this a little better. So I'm going to add a rectangle. And I need, if this is going to represent where these pixels are going to sample from in a UV map. I know that the size of my rectangle is going to be 0.5625 wide, right? And 1 tall. But I also need it to be centered at 0.5625 divided by 2, so halfway over, and then up 0.5, right? And so, you know, if I want these pixel or these position points to be sampled from the correct spots of my UV map, I need to make sure this fits into there. So let's visualize that. So if I merge this SOP with what's coming out of my transform, and I hit this green button here, that kind of gives me the view of both things. So this is going to give me a better preview of what I want. So I'm going to move it to fit in the correct position in this SOP, and then I'll move my camera so that it'll reflect correctly in my render. So let's translate. Let's go ahead and try to translate using this here. So let's do translate the ratio over 2, and then we'll translate up 1, or sorry, 1 divided by 2, so 0.5. And then we're going to do the same thing for our camera. Transform. We're going to translate over my ratio and up 0.5. Okay, and we're still not quite getting it. Why is that? It's because let's see here. Oh, I forgot to divide this by 2. Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so now we're back. Our render is correct. And now our pixels are being placed in a position that gives me X values between 0 and 1 and Y values between 0 and 1. Okay, so we should be getting close, but one thing I know that's going to need to be fixed is that when I'm sampling from my top to chop out of this image, the X values, these are only going to go from 0 to 0.5625. I want those to reflect the U value in the UV map from 0 to 1. So I need to put in a math here. I'm going to change the scope to only affect the TX, and then I'm going to multiply this by my ratio under 1. So 1 divided by my ratio. So now I should be getting values closer to what my actual pixel values are. Yeah, okay, so sorry, this one. So yeah, they're now closer between 0 and 1 because my X values are almost ranging the full width. Okay, what else? Another thing I'm going to do here on my top 2, I'm going to say hold, so that way the sample values, when they hit the edges, if my text goes off the side, it will still keep a sample. It won't sample from the other side if it cycles around. Okay, so now I've got these values. What am I going to do with these? So these are what I can add to my original positions that's going into my spring. first I'm going to have a math to reduce it a bit because I know these are going to be too much. In fact, let's just show it so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I add a math, combine these together. Also, let's take out our alpha value of our touch job. So that way we have three channels here, 3 channels there. That way now when I do the math and I say combine chops, I can say add, and I'm getting, you know, some data added in here. Okay. I've got to figure out this flow. Give me a second, I'm gonna figure this out. Okay, I'm an idiot. The thing I forgot to do was connect my feedback. So I have to select the add it back to my feedback. All right, so now my flow is flowing and I'm adding everything in. You can see obviously this is way too high and it's going the wrong direction because my flow is obviously moving upwards in my video. So I'm going to take this math and I'm going to say multiply by negative 0.1. Cool. Already that's looking great. So now you can see if I go to my video here, you can see this is kind of matching the flow of my video. In fact, let's go ahead and add this over the top of our video. So let's go ahead and make our output. And let's select our video. And let's do an over. And let's use this output as our preview here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a reset in here as well. Just a keyboard in, reset for my feedback. I'm going to drag that value to my pulse for my feedback, so that way I can see what this looks like. Okay, cool. Did you see that? So like as that bubble moves through it, it moves my particles around. Let's do a couple more things just to tweak this. I'm gonna also, I like the look of when you take, you know, the serif font and you make it big. And let's translate this down a little bit because the flow is gonna make it move around. And depending what video effect I use, obviously I'll change it. Also, you'll see stretching that out more. I'm kind of losing a little bit of the shape of the particles, so I'm gonna add more particles. Let's get it up to like 8,000. So yeah, so see now we're getting a nice, you know, filled in letters with 8,000 particles. Let's go to our sort again and let's try a different sort. Sure, let's do X for now. Cool. So I like where this is going. Let's see what the other videos look like going into this. So I've got, you know, this dancer here. You can see it's kind of moving where she is. It's kind of competing like brightness wise. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add a level in after my video select. And I'm going to bring my brightness down a little bit. You know, there's a couple ways I could do this actually, but for now, this is kind of the easiest one. So yeah, so you can see that. This is another really cool one. Let's make our fit to be fit outside. Okay, so you can kind of see as the fish swim, they're moving the particles around through the text. Okay, let's see, one more effect I think we can add to this. I'm going to use the same sort of like motion flash effect that I used in my last video for the time warp. And it'll give a little more interest to what's happening when the particles move. So after my render, I'm going to add a null just because I'm going to split off a section here. And I'm going to put this into a resolution. Let's bring it down for a quarter, so 4 times smaller. I'm going to use my optical flow again here for sort of a different use. Bring it into the optical flow. I'm going to bring that into a blur. So I'm getting like the motion of my different particles in here. Or maybe before the blur, let's do our limit and say positive only. Okay, and then we're blurring it. And then I want to take that and put that into a threshold. And bring my threshold down until I'm seeing kind of good when there's a lot of movement happening, I want to see a lot of the particles. When there's not a lot of movement, I want to see just a little bit, just so I can get little glitters of things. Okay, and then from that threshold, let's take it into a bloom. And let's only take the bloom out of that. And let's see, I'm also going to add, just to make it a little more interesting, a RGB delay. And I'm going to bring these way down to like 3, 2, and 1, just to get a little bit of that like kind of chromatic aberration happening. And then I'm going to take this and add it to my video. Okay, oh, I forgot one thing. I forgot after my blur, I'm going to bring this resolution back up to 4 times. Okay, cool. So, okay, so we can obviously adjust things more from here. I'm noticing, you know, when it's not kind of changing a lot in here, like my optical flow is working a lot when the fish are floating through, but I want the particles kind of always be moving no matter what. So the way I can do that is if I go into before my flow, after my feedback loop here, I'm going to add in just a noise. And I'm going to offset it by 0 because I wanted to go negative and positive. I'm going to turn off monochrome because I'm going to use the red and the green values here. And then I want my period to be pretty low here, just so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to actually, I'm going to stop my video here, just so you can see what this is doing directly. So if I bring down the period, you'll see, and bring down the amplitude, you'll kind of see what's happening here. So now I'm adding a little noise just to the locations, and then I'm going to animate it. So in the transform tab, I'm going to say apps time, dot seconds, let's divide it by like 5. So now I'm getting this nice movement of particles in between everything. I really like that. Okay, so let's turn our video back on so we can kind of see what it's doing. All right, we're just going to leave it at that for today. So, you know, hopefully this is something that's useful to you. You can use it, you know, to make some cool Instagram, you know, videos with something, you know, poetic, or maybe put in some lyrics for a song. You know, maybe instead of using my LFO to drive the count, maybe if you actually change it to the beat of a song or something like that. I think there's some really fun stuff you could do. Obviously, you can tweak more of this. Like maybe I see like, okay, maybe this particular optical flow is moving us a little too much, so I can drop down what I'm multiplying that by to change that. Or, you know, maybe the noise is still a little strong. I can bring that down to like 0.03 just so the legibility is still there. Anyway, I hope this is something you can use. If you make something and put it online, definitely tag me in it. I love seeing what you make with stuff, and I will reshare anything that people tag me in that they've made from one of my tutorials. And yeah, I look forward to making the next one. We'll see you.